Good evening. I am calling the Monday, November 20th, 2023 Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Tonight's Parks and Natural Resources meeting will be held in person and virtually by using Zoom. As chair, I will be leading the meeting tonight. The public is welcome to participate when invited throughout the meeting. Members of the public may attend the meeting in person or join online via Zoom. If you experience audio problems, we suggest leaving the meeting and then rejoining. This usually fixes the issue. Additional instructions on how to participate are posted online at www.burnsvillemn.gov in the public meeting calendar. As usual, tonight's meeting is available for viewing on BCTV and the city's website. If you are unable to participate this evening and would like to submit public testimony, I encourage you to email your comments to city staff or mail your comments directly to City Hall. Tonight's agenda. First, we have adoption of the agenda. The first item is the adoption of the agenda. Did any commissioners have changes to tonight's agenda? No. No changes there. How about staff? Do you have any changes to tonight's agenda?
Nothing from staff.
Perfect. Do I have a motion for the adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And the motion carries. We now move on to our second item of the agenda tonight, which is the approval from the last Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting. Commissioners, are there any changes to the meeting minutes? Staff, any changes to the meeting minutes?
No changes from staff.
Do we have a motion to approve last meeting's minutes?
I so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And that motion carries as well. We move on to citizen comments. Are there any members of the public on Zoom who wish to speak?
I'm not seeing anyone, Madam Chair.
All right. We will then move on to the presentation on the Wetland Health Evaluation Program. I invite Linnea Weir, our Natural Resources staff, to come present. Welcome, Linnea.
Hi, thank you. All right, so my name is Linnea Weir. I'm the Senior Natural Resources Technician with the City of Burnsville. And I am going to be welcoming two of our city's volunteers actually to present on the Wetland Health Evaluation Program, which is a biological monitoring program that they have been volunteering in for this year and in past years. And so let's see, we've got Dawn Ackerman and Stacy Erickson who will be presenting. And I wanted to mention also that not here tonight is Stacy's son Alec, who is a high school student who was also part of the wetland monitoring team, and you'll be kind of hearing from him a little bit later in the presentation. And so let's see. The city is really grateful for all of the volunteers that we have and the information that these volunteers have collected over many years, as you will learn. And we're really excited to have Stacy and Dawn present tonight. And then finally, I just want to mention Caitlin, whose name you see here on the slide deck. And she is not here tonight, but she is the volunteer team leader. And she works really hard to, move along the projects of this Burnsville wetland team. So I think with that, I will bring Stacy and Dawn up here to give the presentation.
All right, we have a slide deck here. Hopefully you guys can see that as well. I'm Don Ackerman.
I'm Stacy Erickson.
And we've been led by Caitlin, as Linnea mentioned. We've been involved with the program for years, as has Caitlin. If we can go to the next slide. Or I guess I have to pull forward. Sorry. Okay, so what is WEP? It's abbreviation. It stands for Wetland Health Evaluation Program. It began in 1997. It helps us citizens get involved with monitoring and getting involved with the community The wetlands are selected by various agencies and we do the execution. We get trained, we get equipment, and we pull together data. And the costs are shared between the county and sponsoring agents. So here's some pictures of us and activity. We had a little celebration afterwards with a picnic. There's some of us getting together. Tom is someone else who's on our team. He's available in the pictures in the blue shirt. There are people that live in Burnsville or the area. We keep a watch of the wetlands going in year after year to see it. And otherwise, these areas would be unmonitored, so we like to keep an eye on that. We look for problems, collect data, and we're looking for future opportunities to improve these things, these areas. And you guys know why they're important. That we keep, one of the things that I don't think we have data on, but we also track the salt that goes into these areas. We can see like closer to roads or further away from roads, we'll see a difference there. That's information we can give the state so they can decide what they want to do about dealing with our excessive winter. But basically, all the pollutants and all the nutrients go into the wetlands, and we can see the impacts of that. So you see stormwater, snow melt. We're looking at how the habitat is affected for the larger animals that depend on these animals that we keep an eye on. And we're looking at bird watching, fishing, canoeing, keeping an eye on those activities as well. You can see us here out on the job.
So we collect a lot of data with WEP. This year, or this past year, the WEP volunteers, we visited 4 wetlands 3 times each. The first trip, we go out and we set up bottle traps.
They look like this.
Yep. We survey an area and we go into water that's about kind of up to our hip. And then we put the bottle traps down just underneath the water so all the macroinvertebrates can swim in there. We leave it overnight, and then the next day we go and collect them. And after we collect them, we pour them through the sieve. So then we can go ahead and get rid of all of the debris and everything. We just kind of squirt through, get rid of all the debris. And then we collect them inside of these containers, which we fill with alcohol, and label them. And then we save these until we're ready to go into the lab. And usually we have the lab either at Inver Hills or sometimes we've had it at the Lebanon facilities. When we also when we go collect them, to get more macroinvertebrates, we go ahead and do a dip net sample where we go into the same amount of water and we swish around and collect a whole bunch of more live ones. Again, we dump them into the sieve and collect them until we're ready to go into the lab. So those are the first 2 trips, and then the third trip is we do a vegetation sampling, and that's where we go and we look at how we do a 100 square meter section, and we track what kind of plants there are and what kind of coverage it is inside that area. The idea is the more variety you have of either the plants or the macroinvertebrates, usually the better, the healthier the wetland is.
Here's some good pictures of us. You can see the dip net sampling happening. We pour it in to get what's living in there out, and then you can see these are pictures of some of the animals we find. The good news is the variety of these animals and how they're doing tells us how the water in the wetland is doing. It seems odd, but leeches are really sensitive to changes in the environment. So if there's a good leech population, which you might think is a bad thing, it's actually a good thing. And we can use that along with all these other invertebrates that we track. We track how many, volume, and see like how that area is doing.
Yeah, so just like Don says, there's some macroinvertebrates that are very sensitive, some are semi-tolerant, and some are very tolerant. So we look at those sensitive ones, and they'll really let us know changes that have been happening either by humans or just natural changes. we look towards them. We look towards nature to giving us feedback to see how we're polluting it or how it's affecting them, which I think is just amazing. It really forces you to stop and take a look at what you're doing and listen to get feedback and to understand if you're doing the right thing or not.
Yeah, when we do the vegetation sampling, you can see some pictures of us out doing that. There's Alec right there looking very closely right there. But we look at the non-vascular and vascular, woody, we see what grass light, and we see what kind of floating or emergent. We try to pick an area of the wetland that's near the coastline, shoreline, so we can get a mix of, you know, where the animals are living and what kind of vegetation is supporting them and how it's doing.
And again, the more variety, the more diverse, the better the wetland.
Yeah, and we also do try to find invasive species, keep an eye out for those, and make sure we track those as well.
And here are the 4 sites that we monitored in 2022. We're giving you the 2022 data because it's been calculated and the numbers have been crunched. So we did B1 is Crystal Lake West, B4 is Alamagnet, B9 is Crosstown West, and B18 is Terrace Oaks North Central. And so here we have just a few slides for each of those sites that kind of give you an idea of the numbers that we found. Kind of the grayish area is kind of the moderate, the norm. Is that what you're saying? Yep. So it kind of gives you an idea of how it falls, how these numbers fall in there. So this is the Alamagnet South. And again, these are pulled from at the end of, in the springtime, all the numbers are crunched and is produced in a report, which is found on our website. So all of this information is found there. We're just kind of giving you just a little hint of this. And it's really cool because WEP does a great job training their volunteers, appreciating their volunteers, and sharing the data when it's done with a little potluck and everything in the springtime. So they really take care of their volunteers. So there's Crosstown West. We have Terrace Oaks North Central. And Crystal West and Crosscheck. And what the Crosscheck is we do a number of sites, but then we also do one extra one, which is one of the other groups from another county, just to double check their numbers, and they do one of ours. And so here was Crystal West, someone else double checked our numbers. Here's kind of an overall glance at for the sampling of the season. Excellent, moderate, and poor for the different areas. What does the city do with the data? Well, they use the data to update the wetland management plans, and the data can help us focus on where to target our water improvement efforts. And benefit to volunteers, and that's why we're up here presenting. For me, it was a great chance to interact with others in the community and work as a team. I get a chance to be a scientist, which I'm not. So it's fun to look into that area and put on that hat and appreciate the real scientists, the professional scientists, to learn new skills and, come on guys, to get outside and be part of nature and part of our wonderful city. Like I mentioned before, WEP does a great job, I think, with our volunteers to provide wonderful training about invertebrate ID training, introduction to WEP, and how to use the equipment, and for the vegetation training.
So I'll talk about myself. They asked us why we did this. So I lived in Burnsville for many, many years. And when I saw they needed volunteers, I just knew I had to get involved. You live in a community, right? And this is a way to see it at a bigger and a smaller level. At a smaller level, we're literally looking at tiny little invertebrates and we're looking at small blades of grass. But at a bigger level, we're seeing how all this connects. And, you know, it's like, have you really lived in a place if you haven't seen the place? And when you're in a wader up to your waist in water, you're getting a good look at the place, and you're real careful about what you look at. So I've seen those changes year to year and how we've done that, and that's been exciting. And I also wanted to meet and connect with other people who are interested in the community. Minnesota can be tough to appreciate in the winter, so it's fun to appreciate it a lot in the summer and the spring when we're out doing this. It's funny to think that, the place that we're collecting this will be frozen soon. So I love getting that data, and I think we need to track the health of these things. It really is part of the community, and we do have an impact on that, and I think we have to keep that in mind. And so I love having all that data, and I love, even if we're just starting the collection now, I like the fact that we can give this information to the next generation so they can kind of see what happens over the years. So that's my story.
I've kind of mentioned some of these things already, where I've been here for 21 years, and I've been volunteering for the past 3 years. Honestly, the only reason I got involved to begin with is because my son was interested in STEM and specifically macroinvertebrates. So when I saw the flyer in the mail, I was like, oh, okay, this is a great way to connect with him. And it was great, or is great. He's had a lot of fun, and, it's a great place for him to meet, professional people in, biology and in environmental. There were a couple of college students that were majoring in it. He got to talk to them. He gets to talk to Lene and to Caitlin, and to see how the process is and how this program is managed and stuff. It's just wonderful. So it's been a great experience for both of us. But being a parent, or if you help a child with, help them learn something, you end up learning a lot more, I think. And so I've definitely benefited from participating in as well. And I did mention that it is just amazing. It's really forced me to, stop and, okay, here I'm doing this, think I'm doing a great job in whatever I'm doing, and then to force me to stop and to listen, in this case, listen to nature to give me feedback on what really, how it is really affecting people or things. I think WEP is an excellent tool for counties to engage their citizens, to get them involved in their area. I have mentioned a couple times that I think it is a well-run program. They really value their volunteers, and I encourage anyone to participate. And again, this is my son, and he's been going 3 years with me as well, and he wanted to write testimony as well, so I was going to read that. His name is Alec Erickson, and he's a junior at Burnsville High School. He's been participating for WEP the past 3 years. He joined WEP because he had an interest in STEM field and nature, specifically macroinvertebrates. He enjoys spending time outside learning about the local habitats in the wetlands and in the labs. He gets to learn about the Minnesota wetland species and participate with the great people in the community. He believes WEP is important for the community because it helps raise awareness for specific species that are endangered and serves as a guide for what we've been doing well and what can still be improved upon to maintain our natural wetlands. So we're open to, if you have any questions from at least a volunteer's perspective on WEP, we'd be happy to answer any.
Did you help with targeting, and are they changing which are the targeted basins you're looking at, or are you staying, or you have a small subset right now, and are you able to kind of make recommendations as you drive around the city and see, hey, I've got a question about that one? Do you make recommendations and things like that?
I personally haven't made any recommendations. Now, Linnea has been out on site with us, and so I know, like my son has asked her, like, oh, why did we do this one? Why did we do Terrace Oaks and stuff? And she's been able to answer those questions, so I'll let her.
Yeah, so we have wetlands that are throughout the city that are kind of on our list of places that we have monitored in the past. So it's since 1998, and so with that list, we only monitor each of these wetlands at most every 3 or 4 years, but most of them there's a much bigger gap in between. And so one of the things we look at is, you know, what haven't we surveyed? What kind of is up for surveying after a certain interval, you know, at, you know, around 5 years maybe. But then we're also, like at Terrace Oaks Park, you know, we're doing a lot of restoration work, and so in recent years we've been adding some wetland sites to the list that are kind of in those restoration areas. So you know, a good opportunity to start tracking the biodiversity, and it's not an immediate process. It's long-term data that it becomes useful when it's long-term data, I think. So, you know, for that Terrace Oak site that they presented a slide on, there was only 2 data points on it. So, it's the beginning of some information.
What are some of have you had direct, you know, have you seen issues in the past and had, you know, made corrections in some of these wetland areas in the last however many years?
Yeah, so we, you know, project by project, you know, every year we don't typically use this to adjust plans in a major way. I think in the past, and I think this was before I was working here, there was an invasive species report from one of the wetlands, and so I'm not sure what the exact immediate action was on that, but that's the kind of knowledge that you want to have as soon as possible, because those things can change really quickly. And so, yeah, so I think it's kind of more of like a big picture way that we use it, as opposed to like every single project, every single year that we're looking at this data and making adjustments. Yeah. As well as all of the other cities in Dakota County, and then as well as Hennepin County, there's a lot of data that's there, just kind of big picture from all of these different places. And so that in itself is also helpful for, you know, our region and understanding changes, you know, as climate changes and stuff like that.
Since you've been doing, oh, go ahead, Tom.
Oh, no, thank you. So the salt portion of this, because, you know, you had mentioned, Don, that we monitor the salt or how that is running off and how that may actually be impacting some of these wetlands, especially ones that are really close to roads. So can you kind of address how that's a relatively recent thing we've been working on, as I remember?
Yeah, there's an agency that, I don't remember the name of it, there's an agency that supports that, and they'll give us like the testing equipment as part of that, and then we send them that data, so they can kind of keep an eye on that.
Right.
And so far, the good news is we haven't really found anything too disturbing, which is great.
Yeah.
Especially considering how much we know
How much
salt
we
is
use,
used.
that's right, yes, yes.
Do you guys go out at the same time frame every year, like same date or same week or?
Yeah, sometimes it's the same, we try to go, I mean, obviously the weather's very variable, so we can find a real difference there. You know, one day you can go and it can be, we can have a really wet spring or really dry spring, and that can affect what kind of life is gonna happen there. You know, the cycles start and end at different times, right? So we try to go out at the same time every year. The weather can be dramatically different, just like if you planned a picnic every year at the same time, you know that. And we collect the data and do, you know, we try to make the best of it. We also try to adjust based on that weather as well, if necessary, to make sure that we're trying to collect at similar times if we can.
Do you collect water temperature by any chance?
Yep.
Do you?
We
Okay.
collect water temperature as well.
Cool.
And then for the macroinvertebrates, we usually do that in June. We do that during the month of June. And then vegetation sampling, that is in July. So it gives a chance for
Stuff to
the vegetation to
bloom.
grow.
Yeah.
And some of the locations are places we visit every year. So like Crystal Lake West, we've been going to the same area every year. And then sometimes we'll rotate different places within the county to make sure that we keep checking other areas, because it'd be impossible to check all of them every year.
Is there anything beyond, you know, you have the data you're collecting on the different invertebrates, plants, et cetera. Are you capturing other kinds of observations, like when the dragonflies flush, or, you know, this is more data-driven than it is anecdotal, you know, incident-driven then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we, you know, we describe the area, we describe anything overhanging, we describe, anything, we draw a picture of the whole site, and so we have that on record year by year to kind of see trends in that as well.
Yeah, we try to track the environment that we're collecting the data from, so that way we make sure that that is consistent as well.
Do you include in your report if there was any construction or anything happening around the site that you're sampling?
I don't know about construction
I haven't
stuff.
seen any construction on any of the sites, but like with the Terrace West, they
Kind
had
of
projects planned, so they want us to collect data before and after that. So I think that can be a side note, if you will, and I think it'd be a factor in when you see variations in the numbers. I think that'd be something to keep in mind. But we generally don't, we're not actively involved with construction sites. Most of the wetlands we have are very park focused, if you will, versus residential. I mean, it could be near it, but it's more in a park than next to a building type of thing.
And sometimes that's, well, like you said, with Terrace Oaks, you guys are making a lot of changes there, and so that's one of the reasons why. So it's almost kind of the after effect, like, oh, we are doing construction, okay, let's monitor it. So I think that's kind of already noted. So, thanks.
Are there any goals that we're aiming for? So I noticed it looks like most of the wetlands are in the moderate zone. Is there a goal that we're trying to achieve with that, or are we just trying to get an idea of patterns and what's happening?
So unlike some of our lakes in Burnsville that have like a management plan clarity goals, for example, water clarity goals, these wetlands, as far as I know, there aren't specific laid out goals of what we're trying to achieve. There's no management that is happening to specifically improve them or to do water quality improvements. So, yeah.
I think our goal is to understand reality and track that reality year over year.
And I will also mention, so this is a partnership with the county. It's a kind of a county program. WEP is, it's a program that's part of Dakota County. Hennepin County also participates in it, and so it's kind of driven by them, and then with participation by the different cities.
Any other questions? All right. Well, there's no formal action tonight on this, so I appreciate your presentation, your time. It's very interesting, and I'm very curious to learn more as the years progress, more information is found.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
We will now move on to our next agenda item, which is the review of the 2023 sustainability programs. And we will welcome Bridget Rathsack to present with us tonight. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Smooth. Wonderful. I think you can all see the presentation. Great. Thanks for the nods. This is my first time using the tech in this room. So, well, hello. My name is Bridget Ratzak, and I am the Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Burnsville. And thank you for having me tonight. It's good to see a few familiar faces from our recycling tour trip and meet a few of you as well. All right, so tonight for the agenda, I have a couple key things. I'm going to talk a little bit about a quick overview just of our sustainability plan and goals thus far, in case you're newer to this all. Talk a little bit about our sustainability hub, our partners in energy process, and then also some new energy efficiency resources that you could personally potentially leverage. And then lastly, wrap up with our 2024 priorities. And you can feel free to chime in with questions if you'd like, or if the chair would prefer we hold, I can do that as well. But whatever you would like, so either way.
Ask questions away.
Okay, great. Thank you. So a quick overview. So Burnsville has big sustainability goals, and I've been here for about 3.5 months, and it's just been great learning about all that you have been working on. So sustainability, really how I think about it and how the city thinks about it, is meeting the economic, social, and environmental needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So really kind of that three-legged stool. All three of those things must be balanced. So the city has really committed to sustainability, and it's actually one of our 6 strategic priorities. And we use sustainability as the lens through which we do our work, because we know that it will affect our community, the environment, and our finances. So sustainability in Burnsville formally was adopted in 2009 with their first sustainability guide plan, and that really focused on city operations and energy efficiency measures. We then developed a revised version, which included a broader community-wide lens in 2020. And you can see here on this slide the 10 different focus areas that are contained in that plan. So there's a really big breadth of information that is contained in this plan. And that revision process really incorporated a lot of stakeholder engagement, including input and feedback from residents, businesses, and staff. I didn't follow my notes. So we have, underneath each of these focus areas, we have a lot of goals and strategies. And this is really driven by our high-level goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050, which is also the current state goal as well. So it aligns to that here in Minnesota. So in order to kind of track our progress and build transparency across the community, we've developed, well, prior to me starting, so I can't take credit for this wonderful sustainability hub, but you should really be proud of what's all contained in here. There's a lot of data that transparently shows where we are and are not tracking to our goals. And you can see key metrics that are in each of our 10 focus areas. And we just released this this year, I think in about March, April. So this will be updated annually, and we'll also include new metrics as we're able to get them. This is probably the biggest section with metrics. So this is the building and energy focus area. There are actually 8 different pages, very similar to this, that track some of those numerical items from our plan. So you can go out using the QR code in the top right, or the link is at the bottom if you want to go out and check this out. Since not everything fits nicely into a number, we also have stories a little bit further down on each of the pages around what the city is doing. And then we also have resources for residents and businesses to take action in your home and in your community as well. So check it out. I encourage you to take a look at some of the goals and see, all of the great work that's going on across Burnsville. And as you can see on here, we have a few that are not tracking to our goals. And so I'm kind of going to talk about another project that we're working on to help us better meet our energy goals as well. So the project that we're working on is called Partners in Energy. This is actually a 2-year collaboration with Xcel Energy to develop and implement individual community energy plan goals. So this really engages a lot of stakeholders across our community to create these goals and strategies and help us develop a really specific work plan. And so this really aligns with our sustainability plan, and it also is going to get more granular so that we can really identify kind of that work plan to get to see the actions that we want to see in our goals. And I'm using vague terms because we're in the planning process right now. So we're in this first chunk of developing the plan. We just wrapped up some stakeholder meetings and we're going into drafting the plan. So implementation will happen later. So on the next slide, so this process has included all of our energy utility providers. So Burnsville is actually served by 3 electric utilities and then 1 natural gas utility. So you can see here, Xcel is the top third of the city-ish. And then Dakota Electric Association has most of the city with Minnesota Valley Electric Co-op, a small, about 3% portion on the southwest side over there. CenterPoint serves everyone for natural gas, which makes things a little easier to understand as we move forward. So all of these utility partners are participating in all of our meetings, which is really exciting, and it's a cool example of public-private collaboration. The team also includes city staff and residents from a variety of homes. We have some multifamily building residents, manufactured home residents, and individual homeowners participating. We also have great facilitators through Partners in Energy that help us organize and lead the meetings, help us write the plan, and will importantly help us move forward implementation of that plan along with our utility partners. And so our vision, as this plan will start with a really high-level vision to identify what we're hoping to achieve, is that Burnsville strives to make energy use cleaner and more efficient by engaging the community in effective energy actions. This plan will help make Burnsville a better place to live and preserve our resources for future generations. And so that's our high-level focus, or our high-level vision. And our focus areas, we've created 5 of these so far that will really help us direct our work in creating that vision. So the 5 focus areas include reducing energy burden, residential energy efficiency, business energy efficiency, multifamily buildings, and renewable energy. So we'll create goals and strategies against each of those focus areas in the plan. And a few things we want to help, especially our most vulnerable residents. So we have focused on that in the reducing energy burden category to help out folks that may be experiencing more energy burden or, paying a big share of their income for energy. And we also want to focus on our multifamily buildings because oftentimes those include our rental populations and they may or may not have the ability to impact what goes on in that building. So we're looking at that specifically too. So all of these goals will kind of collectively come and complement nicely our Burnsville Sustainability Plan goals as well. So these are 2 specific focus areas in our sustainability plan and 2 goals under each that we're really aligning all of our numerical goals in the Partners in Energy Action Plan to, so that we're complementing both of those plans and we're not kind of adding new work or different goals. But as I mentioned, the Energy Action Plan will get really specific and we'll talk about how to reach out to residents and businesses and things like that in that plan, aligning again to these general goals as much as we can. And also, because of this new utility partnership, we can access new information that we didn't otherwise have access to. So that's been exciting as well, because we're getting information directly from the utilities about the community energy usage. So that'll help us track our goals a little bit better. So some themes from our strategy development thus far. As I said, we're still working through all of this, but here are a few of the top themes. Collaboration is really important with different groups and social service organizations, again, to help our low-income community partners. We want to conduct outreach and education campaigns to make this as easy as possible and remove barriers. We want to help organize funding resources and incentives for the community to complete these projects. We want to engage, again, a big spectrum of types of buildings and folks across the community to engage with energy efficiency and save money. And we also want to help encourage businesses to complete assessments to understand maybe where they can leverage these energy efficiency opportunities and potentially renewables. So this plan has been put together with a lot of community input. We had a survey that was in English, Spanish, and Somali. We also had an open house in Spanish and also one in Somali to talk to folks in those communities as well. And we also attended a few other events such as the fire station open house and homeowners workshop to kind of spread the word on the surveys and open houses as well. So here is where we are in our process. We're kind of in that, we're finishing up the middle portion, or we finished up the middle dot on this slide. And we'll be moving into writing and finalizing that energy action plan here this winter. And then we'll look into adopting this with City Council sometime in March 2024, and we're looking at bringing the draft plan back to the PNRC at some point as well. So we'll continue communicating with you all. After that, we'll move into 18 months of implementation in partnership with Partners in Energy. Our goals will extend to 2030, so there's going to be even more work done after that point, but we have that support through Excel and Partners in Energy for 18 months. So we're very excited about this process and appreciate the resources and support of all of our partners in this work and all of the great volunteers. So we also have some great volunteers too on this plan, that like the ones you heard from earlier tonight. So I'll maybe pause because I'm going to move on to a different similar topic, but I've been talking for possibly 10 minutes and just want to see if anyone had questions. No? Okay, Great, I'll keep talking. So this is kind of fun. So this is actually from the slides that I shared with the homeowners workshop a few weeks ago. And so I wanted to share some of these opportunities with you all as well as ambassadors to our community, because there are potentially some energy efficiency resources that you could leverage in your own home or share with neighbors, friends, colleagues, people across the country, really, because a lot of these are federal incentives that are newer with some new federal funding that's just rolled out. So this has been more from the homeowners presentation, but I always recommend folks start by looking at your own home and doing an energy audit to see potentially where you could save money on your bills and also plan for future energy projects. So since we're in Burnsville, everyone's got CenterPoint Energy. You all qualify for a home energy squad visit. And I see some nods, so there's some some people are familiar with this, which is great. But this is actually a reduced cost visit where people will come out into your home and they'll actually like change out your light bulbs. They'll help update weather stripping on your doors and windows. They'll check maybe where you have air leaks in your home that you could help insulate a little bit more. They'll check your appliances for safety and for efficiency. And then they'll also come out with a plan at the end of the visit to say these are the biggest opportunities to save energy and save money in your home. So this visit is really affordable, and the city of Burnsville also offers a discount. These are two types of visits depending on what type of home you have. So Energy Saver would be for homes built after 2000, so newer homes, mobile homes, condos, and renters. And that is $35 if you're a resident of the city of Burnsville, so make sure to mention that in your appointment. It's normally $70, and then the Energy Planner visit is for older homes before 2000, which is $50 for City of Burnsville residents. And there's a link on this page here, so you can go ahead and sign up or share that with your friends, colleagues, neighbors, with everybody. And additionally, free visits are available to income qualified households, which are set annually by the Minnesota Department of Commerce. So mention that to the team at, this group's called Minnesota CE, Clean Energy. Oh, I'm just gonna say CE, I'm blanking on the acronym right now. Sorry about that. But they'll help you understand if you may qualify for the low income assistance as well, because then that visit is actually free. Lastly, due to some of these new federal incentives, you can now write up off to 30% of the cost on your taxes. So just know that when you're doing your tax filing starting this year, actually, so if you did it in 2023, you will qualify. And for about the next decade, you will also qualify, since this federal funding will go for about the next 10 years, which is wonderful. So you can do some pre-planning and get ready for this if you'd like. So step 2, this is where it gets a little messier. So I'm just coming tonight to bring, awareness of what could potentially be available, because there are a lot of opportunities to help you save money on some upgrades depending on your specific situation and what your home may or may not need. This will differ again for everyone's personal situation, which includes your location, household size, and income. So they're really targeting medium to low income folks for these benefits and assistance. But that being said, some of these are available for everyone, such as the energy efficiency tax credits. So there's a couple of websites on the bottom of this page, particularly the Rewiring America calculator. The first link on the left side is really great. You can plug in your income, your zip code, and see what sort of rebates and tax incentives you may qualify for. Most of the tax credits are available now, starting in 2023. The rebates will actually mostly be point of sale, and they'll start more in 2024. So if you potentially have, a furnace, or you're looking at a heat pump or something like that, if you can wait until 2024, you may be able to leverage some of this cost savings as well. So wouldn't want people to miss that here in the next month and a half or so, if you're planning for that and don't need to do it immediately. So a lot of these are federal. There are also some state incentives. A lot of those are coming out in 2024 as well, around different, electrification opportunities, such as for your, natural gas appliances, like your stove, potentially a dryer, things like that. Water heater is also a big one. And then lastly, there are also utility rebates. So I know I mentioned at the beginning, we have 3 different electric providers and then 1 natural gas provider, so you'll have to check in with your electric and natural gas providers. The great news is if you've done step 1 of doing the energy audit, the folks at CE can help guide you through this process and help you identify what sort of rebates and incentives might be available to you. So they make it a little easier if you go through that process, and they also help you quote some contractors and things like that. They have a pool of folks that they work with, so they can help out with that and are a great resource. But if you didn't go through that process, I would encourage you to check out some of these websites and just not to miss out on these savings. And again, I would love if you could share this broadly with other folks so that people here in Burnsville can really leverage these incentives and rebates. So lastly, I just want to wrap up and talk through our priorities for 2024. So I talked about the sustainability hub or dashboard build out. We're going to continue to do that in 2024, including an update and then any other additional metrics that we would like to include. Secondly, we're looking to implement the energy action plan with our utilities and community, which is really exciting. Of course, after adoption by City Council, likely in March. Thirdly, we're going to look at sustainable building design and updates. So we have some city buildings that may undergo remodels or renovations, and so we want to look at how we can ensure we're pulling in all of the learnings from our sustainability plan on that. And then lastly, due to the devastating toll of the emerald ash borer disease, we will be working to inventory plan and assist those in need with removal of dying or dead trees across the city, so we can ensure a good, healthy tree canopy into the future. And that is it, and I just want to thank you all for having me tonight, and of course, answer any questions you all may have.
I did have one that you actually talked about earlier with the first part. In the energy plan portion. I saw that the results show that, and I'm flubbing on some of the numbers, but the results show that power amounts is actually increasing significantly and we're not on target for the 2030 goal. My question is how the energy plan would get energy to decrease while also decreasing natural gas, because people are flipping from natural gas to power. So how do we do both?
Yeah, I think a big portion of that will be looking at how we can make more efficient homes and businesses, because when you kind of look at the research, there's a lot of energy that is typically wasted in a home and business. So I think that's always a good first step. I mean, secondarily, I think reducing energy use will be a little bit difficult when we are electrifying, so I agree that's also happening. But the other thing that's happening is a lot of the utility providers are ramping up renewables, so that's helping drop our greenhouse gas emission footprint. So that will help drop, I guess, if we're looking at from a greenhouse gas emissions perspective, that will help drop it. So I think that is a little deceiving of a number in there, but we also want to just make sure we're not ramping up.
Which we appear to be.
Yes, the natural gas number, I believe, is actually a citywide number, and that was caused by some of our systems were out of whack, I believe, that we're using natural gas. We have corrected a bit of that, but I'm also very new, so I'm looking to the crowd to see if my manager might have other suggestions or thoughts to completely put him on the spot. But yeah, so we are looking at that as well.
Yeah, I was going to comment about the natural gas as well. It just seems like those are going up at a pretty significant rate, as opposed to, obviously we want to try to back that down. Do you think there's, as some of the programs for improving efficiencies, the swap out to heat pumps, the swap out to more efficient water heaters and other things like that, do you think encouraging those programs is going to help with that, or do we really need to have a transition away from natural gas to electric in order to really, or is the offset equal? In other words, if I go down by 20% on natural gas, am I actually just going to go up by 20% on electric? So do you have a feel for that at all?
I think the answer is usually it depends. And I would never want to tell anybody what they should have in their own home or business. But I think some of the federal funding really is to electrify. And that is kind of assuming a lot of our utility providers are going to start utilizing more renewable energy sources, so that the greenhouse gas impact is lower on the electric grid, if that makes sense. That would be a big modeling question I'm not sure I'm able to answer.
That's fine, that's fine.
But I think kind of pairing the two along again with efficiency is actually always the thing I recommend starting with. Like if a home is not efficient to begin with, your equipment might not be right sized or your business. So I think really starting with efficiency is super important as well, if you're considering those things.
You talked about talking to utilities, so I think as a new homeowner, I had to put in new guts of my house, furnace, and of course, all the things failed the first couple of years I was in my home, and I didn't know a lot about home ownership, and so I ended up putting in new gas stuff, higher efficiency, but it wasn't the utility companies that were obviously selling that to me, it was the HVAC companies or whatever. Is there any communication with these companies on getting them to not incentivize, but let homeowners or businesses know that, hey, we're going to electrification, because that would have been good to know at the time.
I mean, I think there are currently in our draft strategies and goals, we are thinking about how can we just talk with some of the HVAC providers and share resources about some of those incentive and rebate programs, because I think those would be really helpful to pass along to you all as the consumer when you're making those decisions. So I think that will be important to kind of share that information with those folks as well, because that's how a lot of people will get their information. We did in the survey, it kind of showed that people get their information on energy generally from their energy provider. No surprise. Some did say the city of Burnsville, but then not as many said contractors, but I think that is definitely there because that contract would be in your home, standing there with you, helping you out, hopefully in a non-emergency
and trying to sell you
situation.
something.
Right. And so, I mean, if they can sell you something while telling you about all the rebates that are included, maybe that will be helpful, but at the very least, I just, we want to share information with them so that they can pass that along, because I think that's important. And that actually in the home energy squad process as well, they'll include that. So some of the they have a giant pool of contractors, and so then the contractors will just grab that bid and then they'll have that there. So it's kind of a nice tool, and I've been in communication with them, and they're gonna keep including those as all of the information comes out through the federal government. So that'll be great too for consumers in the end.
I'd also suggest, and maybe I should have been involved in the community stuff, but it seems to me that, we walked in kind of in your circumstance, oh, I need a new range. And I went to a store and I said, this is what I want. And of course, the store is like going, oh, well, let's get this one. I really wish I'd gone electric instead of going with gas. And so maybe at the box stores that are selling these things as well, that kind of information that consumers can go, oh, I don't want to get that stove, I want to get this one instead, because of the potential for rebates and so on and so forth. So I don't know if that would be helpful as well.
Great, yeah, thank you.
And then one other thing, if I may, please. You talked about removing barriers, because I think some of the homeowners associations and some other places are kind of like, you cannot put up solar. And I don't know how you go around removing that barrier, or other renewable sources, but I think that's an area that I've been frustrated with. I would love to put up solar, but I'm not allowed to. So I don't know if that's a part of the process of having those conversations with HOAs. I know we can't direct them what to do, but there seems, maybe there's an opportunity.
Definitely, yeah, to share information and things like that, I think is really important, exactly. And also, yeah, I believe the state passed some new legislation in the last year, which allows for solar on HOA properties specifically. So that's nothing to do with the city, but at the state level, that has been adjusted as well.
I have more of an observation than a question, but maybe they tie together. One of the things we realized in doing some construction work on our house, I was talking to the electrician because we have issues with fuses blowing. And we have an older house. And so what he has shared with me is that the older houses aren't equipped for the current electrical pull that a lot of newer appliances have. And so I find that really interesting, even with when we have high efficiency, it's still pulling a lot of electricity. So it'll be interesting to see how that gets balanced out moving forward and what that footprint looks like over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I mentioned, I had it in my notes, but I was ignoring them a little bit. Electrical panel upgrades are actually included in some of the federal incentives and rebates. So check that out too, because they know that, I also have an old home that has a 100 amp panel. And so I can't add even an electric dryer at this point. Okay, I didn't know that was a joke.
No, it's just horrible.
Yeah, it's small, so I'm also personally looking at that as well too, because of that same similar issue too. So check out the federal funding incentives as well, because that could help, because they know that that's going to be a barrier for some. A lot of our homes are already built, and a lot of our buildings are already built, so we need to kind of work within our current structures too.
It's an interesting balance for sure.
Yeah.
And then I have one other question just about renewables. So we have an older home with mature trees, so we don't qualify for solar because our trees shade too much of our roof. So does the city look into other opportunities or other options for situations like that? Because I'd hate to get rid of our beautiful mature, they're actually ash trees that are nice and protected. So really don't want to get rid of those, but we'd love another opportunity, another option.
Yes, and that's great. I mean, I think that comment on balance too, that this is the same type of question, right? Balancing, like, you don't want to cut down mature trees to get solar. So there are a lot of programs through your electric, or there possibly are programs through your electric provider. I don't know who you have, but check it out. You can do kind of like community solar type subscriptions or things like that, or different potential opportunities that are offered through the utilities. So I would check into that, because they would offer that directly, and so then that would go right on your bill, and kind of would be balanced by whoever that is, that your provider is. So I definitely understand that kind of balancing act, because you also don't want to cut down those trees. So, and congratulations on the ash trees that are doing well.
Well, thank you to the city for taking care of them, because that's why they're doing great. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much for their presentation and the information. It was really insightful and interesting.
Thank you.
Great evening. We will now move on to our next agenda item, which is the update on the market garden, community gardens, and food forest. And I will invite recreational programmer Jess Kaliki to join us tonight. Welcome. Thank you. All right.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. My name is Jessica Skalicki. I'm a recreation programmer here at the City of Burnsville, and I'm going to give you all just an update on our 3 types of gardens we have here at the city: our market garden, our community gardens, and the food forest here at the City of Burnsville. Just a brief agenda for you for each of these 3 gardens that I mentioned on the first slide. I'm going to give you a history of each one of those types of gardens. As I'm going through, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about the amenities that we have at each one. And then if there's any sort of like relevant programs or statistics that I can share about any of the gardens, I will do that as I'm speaking about each one of these gardens with you. So first up, I'm going to talk about the community gardens, which we have 3 of them. Then I'm going to talk about our market garden. And then finally, I'll finish with our food forest. All right, so here in the City of Burnsville, we have 3 community gardens. The community gardens here are an opportunity for people to grow their own produce, fruits and vegetables, and harvest them to either eat them all themselves or, as in the case of this gardener who shared this photo of her vegetables with me, or of her tomatoes with me, share them with her entire neighborhood because she couldn't possibly use all of those tomatoes in one season. But they're a really great place for people to, yes, grow their own produce, but also to be very sustainable with the way that they're getting fruits and vegetables, and also it really creates a sense of community for people who are involved in the community gardens. I often visit community gardens and people are almost like giving me tours of the garden and saying, oh, John over here, he's been here for 8 years and he's really good at growing this thing, and you know, Alex over there, he's been here for 3 or 4 years and he's great at this. And I often see people helping other gardeners out. So our community gardens are really a place that people can really establish that community feel with each other. The first garden that was established at the city of Burnsville was Neal Garden. This is a map here. It is not drawn to scale, but it's just a traditional garden, and that each one of the plots that you see numbered here is 20 feet by 20 feet. There are 39 plots available for rent there. And Neal Garden specifically probably has they all do, but I'd say Neal has probably the most community feel of all of them, because we have gardeners who claim they've been there for at least 10 years. And I'll be honest, I could not figure out when Neal was created, but it's at least 10 years old, maybe even 20 years old. And there's been gardeners that have been going there year after year after year. The plots are each 20 feet by 20 feet. There's 3-foot paths in between each plot. That is a shared water spigot for everyone that is in between plots 11 and 16 that you'll see there on the map. And it does fill up every single year, and I'd say probably about 70% of the gardeners there are returning. The ones who don't return tend to be the ones who just kind of have reached the end of their ability to garden, and so it's passed on to newer, younger gardeners who join us. And like I said, many gardeners here know every other gardener there by name. The second garden that was established here at the city of Burnsville is the Wolk Garden, and you'll see a map here as well. Wolk is an incredibly unique garden. It actually has 3 kind of separate gardening areas, which you'll see in those 3 circles. And in Wolk Garden, it was established in 2011, and it was designed by a professional horticultural and permaculture company called Southwest Forest Gardens. And basically, when you sign up for a plot in Wolk Garden, you're actually given 2 plots. So if you look at these circles here on the slide, you'll see like if you look at any specific number, you'll see that it's actually listed twice, because every gardener is given 1 plot in the center, which is a circle, and it's called a keyhole garden. And then they're also given a plot that's more square shaped, and that's up against the fence around the outside. And so in those keyhole circles in the middle, it's called a keyhole because it literally looks like a hole that you can stick a key in, and you can walk into that keyhole, bend down, and then you can reach your entire circle garden that is around you. And so it's meant to be kind of easily accessible, to be able to reach all the gardens within arm distance within that circle. And so that's, for kind of daily harvest, as they called it when they first built it, things that people can pick every day from their garden to then go bring home and cook. And then the outside plot that you're given is meant for more trellis and vine plants, such as tomatoes. So whenever new gardeners come here, I have to kind of sometimes go out to the garden with them and explain, like, you don't just have this plot, you also have that plot over there, because they get both of those plots. For many years, and maybe one of our commissioners can answer this question because I don't know for how many years, but for many years, we have partnered with a nonprofit called the Open Door, and we give them a reduced rate for renting the plots. So they rent them from us for a reduced rate, and then they give them out to members of their community for free, for them to use those plots. And so they rent, for the past number of years, it's been 15 plots that they rent from us. It has 47 plots available, of which 15 go to the Open Door, and then the other plots have, as long as I've been here, always filled up as well. And then the third garden that we have is at Crosstown East Park, which is at the corner of Burnsville Parkway and Portland Avenue. And this was actually started in 2021, so it's our newest garden. And when it was built, in the years 2021 and 2022, it actually had 112 plots for those 2 years. Yeah, in that same area. This is what it is now. But at the time that it was built, the plots ranged in size from 5 feet to 5 feet was the smallest, and the largest was 20 feet by 20 feet. And the idea here was that people who would be gardening in this garden might be newer gardeners, and so they wouldn't necessarily want to commit to a large space. So they might just kind of want to test the waters and maybe get a smaller plot to see if they really liked it. But in reality, pretty much everyone wanted kind of the same size plot, which was like 20 feet by 10 feet. And so those plots would fill up very quickly. And then the like extra huge plots didn't really fill up. And then the smaller plots, people who wanted, 20 feet by 10 feet, they ended up just renting like multiple of the smaller plots, but they were across a pathway. And so it just wasn't really an efficient use of space. And we actually, for those 2 years, only filled it up about halfway. So in 2023, this year, we decided to have the garden redesigned completely. So it's now, as you can see, all plots that are the exact same size. So there are 53 plots available. They are all 10 feet by 20 feet. And ta-da! We filled up the entire garden this year for the first time since it was established back in 2021. So before I move on to the next slide and talk about Burnsville and the food forest, I do want to mention also, I don't have a slide for that specifically, but we have the Dakota County Master Gardeners. There's a group of 3 of them specifically who are very invested in community gardens here at the city of Burnsville, and some of them actually have plots in like multiple gardens, and they're just very excited with sharing with the community about gardening and seeds and planting, etc., etc. So 3 or 4 times a year they go out to each one of the gardens and set up a table and tent and chairs and just share with people about gardening and tips for gardening and Burnsville in general, and people can come ask their questions. And then they also have an adorable little Facebook page where they post little gardening tips and recipes and things like that to share specifically with members of Burnsville Community Gardens. All right, so those are the 3 community gardens, and then I want to talk next about a program called Grow Burnsville. So in 2021, the city secured a grant from the U.S. Conference of Mayors to start the Grow Burnsville initiative. This program aims to build a long-term solution to help the rising challenge of food inequity in our community. With the grant, the city of Burnsville is able to increase opportunities for community members to have locally grown produce with high nutritional value, especially for members of community who might have more trouble getting that produce. This was done through 3 new programs. 1, the addition of a new community garden. Secondly, a market garden. And then thirdly, a food forest. This grant was $125,000. And like the slide said, it was specifically to address food inequity. So on the last slide, I talked about Crosstown East. That was the new community garden that was built because of the grant that we got from Grow Burnsville. And so Crosstown East Garden was chosen specifically in the location that it's at because it's kind of sandwiched in between on 3 sides apartment complexes, and in a location in the city where there's kind of lower income housing or people who don't necessarily have access to their own green space. And so placing it right there is a way that people could have access to a community garden that most needed it. When we established Crosstown East Garden, because of Grow Burnsville specifically, one of the things we wanted to do was make it more like equitable and inclusive and accessible. And so we thought we should make community gardens have a scholarship rate. And one of the ways that we sometimes may create barriers when offering scholarships is requiring people to fill out this form or prove your income or meet in person or prove that you need this scholarship. And we said, you know what, we're just going to make this as simple as possible. When you sign up, you can literally just check a box that says, I want the scholarship. and that's it. Like, if you say I want the scholarship, then you get one. You need no proof of you needing it. You can just say, hey, I want this scholarship. And so for many years, gardeners at Wolk and at Neal have paid a specific rate, but we decided to kind of bring them along with that scholarship rate and offer for the first time people to also in those gardens to say, I want a scholarship. And I was pleasantly surprised by how few people chose to get the scholarship. So I went and actually ran the numbers today. And since we've implemented this, 17% of gardeners choose the scholarship rate, which is half price, and 83% of gardeners choose the full rates, which I think is incredible that people do that. And as a matter of fact, our registration system's kind of wonky. So sometimes it may be such that like the full rate appears to not be available and only the scholarship rate online. And so people will literally call me and say, hey, I don't need the scholarship rate. Can you open up a spot for me for the full rate? So I think there was a little bit of concern in the beginning, like, oh, people would like abuse it, but they don't. You know, they really are being honest about what they can afford, which I think is really cool. Yeah, so that's the community gardens, and that's the community garden piece of Grow Burnsville. The second piece of it is a food forest, and this is located actually right here. You can see it if there was no building here. You can see it right on the other side of City Hall. The Foods Forest is a low-maintenance, open-to-all solution to help nourish anyone experiencing food challenges or anyone walking down a sidewalk who sees a tasty apple and wants it, and they could just take it. So that's what it is. It's a place where there are, let me read this because it sounds so beautiful, over 40 varieties of fruits, berries, grasses, flowers, herbs, teas, mushrooms, nuts, roots, and vegetables. And everything there is free for all for anyone to take whenever they want, just by going through and picking whatever they want, like it's a forest, you know? This was established in 2021. We've had some very difficult summers, so the yield there has not been the greatest, but we just really look forward to, as it grows and matures, that residents or anyone will have an opportunity to freely harvest anything planted there without any restrictions. And then this is actually an interactive map of the food forest that is available on our website that shows just a few of the things that I've mentioned that are in the food forest. And by in, I mean planted, but maybe not yet actually producing those things. And yes, it's right across the street right here. Yeah, literally across the street from the parking lot. Okay. And then finally, our market garden is so cool. So the market garden is also located in Civic Center Park. It's kind of across from the Burnsville Ice Center. If you're familiar with the goats, it's near where the goats are. There used to be an old ice rink there, and it was underutilized. And so we took out the ice rink and we put in a garden where the ice rink used to be. So my very best guess is it's about 18,000 square feet of gardening space, and every last inch of it is strategically used to grow the most fruits, herbs, and vegetables possible during the summer gardening season. All of the produce that is grown at the market garden is donated to a local food shelf to be given for free to members of our community. The market garden is tended by one market garden supervisor and then 6 to 10 market garden interns every summer. We are incredibly thankful that every summer since we have started this in 2021, we have someone, her name is Paige. She's a master gardener. She has a huge wealth of gardening knowledge and love for teaching about gardening. So she has joined us every summer kind of as a part-time seasonal job to be working there in the garden with these high school and college age interns. The majority of the students that we hire have absolutely no gardening experience whatsoever. And when I ask them in their interview, tell me about your gardening, they're like, I helped my grandma. Like, they probably picked one tomato ever. But they do a great job. And so Paige is really great. She loves working them, and a lot of them have no gardening experience, but by the end of the summer, they have employable gardening skills. In addition to training these interns, it serves as an educational resource as well. Every summer, when they start in the garden, school hasn't let out yet, and so there's kind of right behind the ice rink on the other side, there's a few schools. And so kind of the nature and science clubs of those schools walk over and get a tour of the garden, and they're able to learn about what we do there. They're able to plant some seeds and just learn from Paige and the interns about what they do there at the market garden. And then also during our large community-wide events such as the Burnsville Festival and Fire Muster, Paige and the interns are on hand there to give tours, give samples of the produce, share about the market garden with the members of the public. To date, the market garden has donated over 11,000 pounds of produce to local food shelves. And this year specifically, they donated exactly 4,538 and a half pounds of produce to food shelves. Paige was extremely diligent about keeping exact records of the amount that she donated. So that's the market garden, and that's it. Those are our gardens that we have at the city of Burnsville, and I would just love to, if you have any questions, I can tell you what I know.
How much does it cost to rent a plot?
Yep, so in Neal and Wolk, it's $46, and then if you choose the scholarship rate, it would be $23, and then the plots at Crosstown East are about like half that size, so they're 23, and the scholarship rate is about 12. Those numbers I gave you might be $1 off because they're different, 2023 and 2024, but roughly that. Yep.
With the success of all of this, and obviously you just expanded the community gardens, are there any long-term plans for expanding any of this down the road?
Not that I know of, no. But great question. I think we could definitely have more community gardens. We're not bursting at the seams per se, mostly because we did build Crosstown East. I think prior to me getting here, it was a very convoluted system of like lotteries and angry gardeners and people wanting priority because they're returners, and some people just really not getting a spot. But because we have Crosstown East now, I think the demand equals what we have. It's about equal. So that's good for now. Hopefully it stays like that. Yep.
I have a question
Sure.
and a comment.
Great.
For my question, I'm curious how it, like, was the food forest chosen to be here because this is like the city center area, or was there some other thinking behind that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And so I personally was not part of that decision, but I was reading a lot about it today. And from what I saw on our website, for both the market garden, community garden, well, of all three, the market garden, community garden, and the food forest, they surveyed over 300 different possible locations. And then I guess they put like point values on different priorities that they had for each of the three different gardens. And then from there, they were able to make a decision with a few different consultants that we used to decide where each one of those gardens were. So no, I don't really have an answer, but I know that's how they got to that decision.
Okay, thank you. And then I just wanted to acknowledge when you said that once you opened up a system where it was open to anyone to get a plot for half price, and then only 17% of people did, is that has been my experience past working in food shelves, is people just come in and we didn't ask for any kind of how much money do you make,
Right.
and because people aren't proud of that.
Right.
So if they say they don't
Right.
have it, then they
Right.
don't have it.
Yeah, and I got that idea because I'm actually from Orlando, Florida, and there's a group of 3 or 4 actually like coffee shop bakeries where that's their model as well, and they have prices listed, but it's also like you can pay whatever you want, and they've been around for like 10 years, 15 years, because people who can afford it will, and those who can't say, hey, I want a bagel and I don't want it for $4, can I just pay one? And they're like, okay. So I think it's really cool. So
It is amazing.
yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was curious, for the community garden, how did you choose the varieties of vegetables that are gonna be, and herbs and stuff that are gonna be grown? Is it tied to community traditions or, you know, and, you know, I can imagine some things are kind of more universal, but something like kohlrabi, I don't know if you're growing that, but, you know.
Yeah, no, that's a great question as well. So, you said community garden, but I think you mean market garden. But that is a great question. So a few different things. One, Paige works very closely with 360 communities to ask them what sort of produce do people want. And I actually today was just reading through some transcripts of some phone calls that she had with them, in which they specifically mentioned some vegetables and that don't grow these because people don't take them, squash being one of them, but then did also mention things that everybody wants. And so they actually, it's not cheating, but sometimes we joke about it. Part of the reason there's so many pounds of produce is because they grow a lot of watermelon, because that's something that people really want. It's not most of the garden by any means. There's 15 different rows, and she gives me a list each year. I think they grew 30 different things this year, including watermelon. But it's things that people want is the biggest, and there's kind of the staples, like everybody wants basil and tomatoes, and, that just kind of makes sense, cucumbers. But then other things that they tell her people specifically want these. I do want to mention this as well, though. Paige is very adventurous, so there are a few things that she has grown that, honest to God, I've never even heard of. And so what she does is she'll grow a small sampling of these, and then she gives like an informational sheet about what it is, how to cook it, and a little recipe to the food shelf so that people at the food shelf can kind of encourage people, hey, why don't you try out this thing? And here's a recipe for it as well. Some of which might be kind of more of a traditional cuisine for certain ethnic groups here in our community, but other groups may not know anything about them. Yeah.
Thanks.
Supply and demand.
Yeah.
So if you built more, would it more be used?
It's like that baseball movie.
Yeah.
If you build it, they will come. Right? I do think that if we build more community gardens, that they would be used. I'm not sure how quickly they would fill up, and I do think it would be we would have to be very strategic about where we put them. But they would be used, and the reason I say that is because a lot of gardeners want more than one plot. And they would take more than one plot if I would give it to them. And as a matter of fact, we do have some gardeners that are able to get more than one plot if there's extra ones available after the sign-up period has ended. But a lot of gardeners, they would take like 10 plots if I could give it to them. So, yeah.
I may have a little bit of a suggestion.
Sure.
So, obviously, the city of Burnsville is very happy with the tree cover and trying to increase the tree canopy.
Yeah.
Shade obviously is not great for gardening.
Yep.
And so I think there may be a lot of homeowners that don't want to necessarily drive to these locations that would benefit from some sort of small gardening plot. I know I would benefit from that because I have too much shade in my yard. So maybe instead of whenever the expansion is thought about, instead of larger community gardens where there are 50 plots, maybe you pick tiny little spots where like, here's 4, here's 6.
Yep.
In different neighborhoods that people could take advantage of.
That's a good idea. Thank you. I'll write it down. With my imaginary pen. Yeah, cool.
And likewise, I would love to see more food forests spread throughout the city.
Yeah.
Like, that would be amazing and awesome.
Can I ask one of you all a question? Noah, do you have anything to share about your market garden experience?
Well, I did it 2 years ago, and it was pretty unique because I'd actually worked with my uncle who owns a greenhouse in Farmington. And so I'd done a lot of stuff, but I wasn't really understanding why I was doing some of the things I did when I was working for my uncle. But when I got to work with Paige, it was really unique to be able to learn some of those things about why we're doing some of these things. And since it was more, community focused and food focused, it was really interesting to learn some more of those facts about some of the vegetables that we do get, and more talking about the difference between the things that people want to use and some of those things that people actually are going to eat. Because theoretically, things might sound good, but of course not everybody's able to prepare or know how to prepare everything. So it's pretty unique in that regard, just to learn more about the differences between consumer, types of gardening. So.
I would love to hear more about your experience as a volunteer at some point.
Like for,
Like, what was that whole experience like for you? How would you recommend it to other people?
Like as an intern, as a market garden intern?
Yep.
Oh, well, he wasn't a volunteer, but
Oh, an intern. Sorry.
that's okay. We paid him some money.
well, I mean, I would just say pretty much anyone who really likes gardening or even just has like a passing interest is really great. Like I know I had one of my friend's little brothers was actually working with me, and it was kind of fun to interact with him and stuff like that and teach some of these older people. Like I know that there wasn't a lot of kids that were my age, but some of these younger kids that were coming in, kind of teach them about these things and not have it all be on a page all at the same time. But yeah, I'd say anyone who's interested, it's really good experience and opportunity that's pretty local to understand some of these things.
Well, as a relative newcomer to the Burnsville area, these kinds of programs are just astounding to me, and I'm so proud to live in a place where the community has decided that this is important and that it is something we want to give back to the community. I commend you on the work, and as well as the volunteers and others, even if they were paid to do it. It's a remarkable thing to see. So thank you so much for the efforts.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, there's no formal action tonight. It's just informational. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me. Yep.
Our next meeting is a work session planned for December 4th, 2023. At this time, is there anything else by staff?
Yes, Commissioners, I would like to remind you that the Parks Plan, the survey is still available online and will be open through December 7th. So if you haven't taken the time yet to take that survey, the short version, the long version, please do so. And there is also an opportunity there for you to add suggestions like additional neighborhood community gardens and things like that in either the ideal wall or on the mapping project piece that they have on that survey as well. And then I would like to also invite you all to the winter lighting ceremony that is Wednesday night at 6 p.m. at Nicollet Commons Park. So.
Thank you. All right. With that, a request for adjournment for tonight's November 20th, 2023 Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed to adjourning tonight? Well, with that, have a happy Thanksgiving. Have a great week, and hopefully we see you Wednesday night.